Okay, hi. It's Monday here afternoon here on the East Coast. This is a second little informal video to introduce week two and to wrap up week one a little bit. I hope you all got to look at the first video that I shared with you that introduced week one. I posted it in the announcements, and I'll just be doing these each week to hopefully support your learning experience in the class. Okay, so week one, I thought we were off to a good start. You all participated well in the forums, and for that reason, everybody's going to get 100% in terms of the grades for those two discussion forums if you posted the right amount within the right time frames. I will say going forward, starting this week, I'll look a lot more closely at not just the timeliness and the quantity of your posts, but rather the quality. And by that I mean to what extent did your post add to the depth, breadth, and thoughtfulness of our discussions? And if your post made the discussion more interesting, then certainly you'll get a better grade. Okay? Um, okay, but in discussion forum one, we got to know one another. I hope that you noted those students who have similar interests as yours and or are in the same programs. I hope that you get to make some connections, not necessarily just inside the class, but outside as well. Let's see, and then the second discussion forum, we talked about the grantor-grantee relationship. And the whole point there was just so to highlight the fact that grants come with conditions, not just money. And so as an applicant or a recipient of grants, I hope that you'll have your eyes wide open to the positives and negative consequences of actually applying for and getting grants. Okay, and to that extent, I just wanted to say as a supplement, maybe this is a great book, Nonprofits and Government. Elizabeth Boris is the editor. And in chapter 6, there is a great chapter on government financing of nonprofit activity. And there is a wonderful section here on pages 233. It's called Assessing the Impact of Government Financing of Nonprofit Organizations. And it's just a couple of pages, but it's really, really good. And then after that, Mr. Smith has some case studies where he follows the impact on 5 different nonprofits of receiving money from the government. So if you're particularly interested in that topic, just an extra resource for you. Okay, so in week 2, our reading is from Hall, and it's basically about the search for funding. And Hall, at the very outset, highlights that what you really want to make sure is that you are applying for grants that you have a chance of being granted, right? You don't want to waste your time applying to grants that the grantor has no, for which you have no chance of getting the grant, i.e. that happens when the fit between you and your organization and your needs, capacities, and wants have nothing to do with the interest of the grantor. So Hall talks at the very beginning about making sure that you look at the criteria of the grant having to do with eligibility, conditions, match requirements, allowable cost, program areas, and funding amount. And that's right here at the very beginning. And the rest of the chapter, he talks in detail about each of those criteria. Hall also makes the great point that there's normally not a perfect match between what you want, about the interest and prerogatives of the grantor and your interest and organizational needs as a grantee, so that as you look at different grants and the possibilities of you applying for them and getting them, you want to kind of group your different grant opportunities into three categories: viable, not viable, or possibly viable. Okay, and then you can then rank grant opportunities along the continuum of those three, and then at some point decide which ones you really want to go for and which ones you don't want to go for. And Professor Robinson, in his official video for the week, does a great job of talking about those things, so I'm not going to go into that here. But I did want to make 4 points in general, maybe 5. One, Robinson talks about the informal network for finding out about grant possibilities, particularly the importance of the informal network at the state and local level. I just wanted to share that nonprofit membership organizations at the state and local level are particularly good places to pick up this informal information. Many of these organizations, right, they're membership organizations, so they're serving you, the nonprofit, and the way they serve you is by letting you know what grants are available out there. Okay? A second thing having to do with eligibility is that at the state level, at least here in Massachusetts, I'm not sure how widespread this practice is, but there's a practice called pre-qualification. And this means that typically applying for any grant or contract is a two-step process, meaning first you have to sort of be qualified in a pre-qualification process as being a viable nonprofit organization that the government really wants to work with. In other words, are you a viable nonprofit? And so the first hurdle of making an application in Massachusetts here for a state contract is to get pre-qualified as a viable organization. Then, and only then, can you be considered for a specific contract or a grant. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't think that was mentioned anywhere. 3, Hall does a nice job in here of talking about the match between your organization's interest and the specifications or qualifications of or conditions of the grant. And I just thought this was a great chart, so I just highlighted it there for you. Because as Hall states and Robinson also says, the conditionality of grants is typically not going to exactly match your organization. So you're going to have to tinker a little bit in terms of thinking about, okay, this is what the grantor wants me to do. It kind of fits, it really doesn't quite fit with my needs, but maybe I can, well, this is sort of like the price for the lunch, right? The money is the lunch, and how you have to adjust and do things that you normally wouldn't do is what you pay for getting that lunch. And so Robinson has this nice discussion at the end of his video about how that's sort of like the adjustments and the adjustments that are made in contract management between price, I may not get this exactly right, but between price, quality, and timing. I think that's what it was, right? Scope, time, and money. are the terms used in project management. And so you can tinker with each of those a little bit in terms of what you had planned in order so that your project can fit into the specifications of the grant, right? In, a, in layman's terms, what this would simply be is you're trying to see if your square peg, your needs and interest, can fit into the round hole of the funder's conditionality, right? So you kind of adjust what you want to do so that it fits with what the grantee wants. And the question is, how much do you adjust what you want to do in order to fit the grantee before you're so contorted that it really isn't going to work? And so my last point is simply, sorry this is 10 minutes already, is simply that you can think about searching for grants as being similar to seeking out a college or a graduate program that you might want to attend. In other words, you want to find that college and university, right, that is offering what you want and that you have a chance of qualifying and getting accepted into, right? Okay, so, I didn't bother looking at Yale or, any of the top-notch Ivies. Well, I did one, but at any rate, no chance. So you don't bother applying to those universities and colleges that you have no chance of getting into, but you try to find the university and college that, one, you can get into, and two, that you really have an interest in going attending. And it's the same thing here. You try to find those grants that you have a chance of getting and that you actually want, right? And so that's what Chapter 2 is all about. And I guess the last piece here is that moving forward then, just like when you applied to the colleges and universities that you wanted to get into, you were thinking about, how do I present myself in the best possible light so that I will get accepted? And that's what the grant application process is all about. And we'll talk about that more in later chapters, so I'll be quiet now about that. Okay, hope that was helpful. See you online.